Okay. Okay, I'm already sharing my screen with you. We're continuing with the long E sound. As I said, when I was talking about the EE and the EA, I only showed you some of the words. Later on, I'm going to show you all of the words, all of the cards that contain either the EE and the EA. More for vocabulary, so you can start building up your vocabulary rather than for pronunciation. Now, but because these were originally only pronunciation cards, there won't be any meanings. And I can't tell you the meaning of every word, or we'll be here forever. So I can show you the card, show you the word, give you some words, give you some meanings, especially when the meaning is maybe metaphorical or interesting or as an expression. And the other words you can look up in the dictionary, and it's good that you begin to start looking words up in the dictionary so you can start remembering them. Okay, so I'm gonna go and I'm going, don't forget, we're still talking about the long E sound. Right here, sharing this with you. Now, I know it looks like you said, but Corrales, you said you're not going to talk about the EE, and there it is. But that's just the word. What I'm looking at, what we're going to be looking at is when a word ends in Y. The problem is, just like the problem is with the EA, not all words that end in Y have that E sound. For example, when you have MY or SKI, that Y does not sound, that is not me and ski, right? That is my, I, and sky, I. So some words that end in Y, you pronounce one way, and other words that end in I, you pronounce another. I guess if there's a rule of thumb, there's words that are short, very short, and end in Y. A lot of times you pronounce those words like I. And words that are longer and end in Y, sometimes you pronounce them as an E. That E sound also in English, it's like the et, E-T-T-E in French, and the ito and the ita in Spanish. Like, for example, if the person's name is Bill, that's a nickname already because his real name is William. But if he is someone that you know, a lot of times he's a little boy, but not always. But if he's a little boy, you don't just call him Bill, you call him Billy. That E sound at the end of the word, not always. It's a sign of affection, right? Not always, because if you call somebody seedy, that is not a sign of affection. That means that they're somewhat dirty and suspicious. There's someone that you think you have to watch your back on. He's a seedy person, or this is a seedy area of the city. It's an area that's not very clean. You have to watch your back. So it all depends on the words. Once again, language is culture and it reflects culture. So I can't give you a general rule, but let's look at some of the words that end in Y and at the end of the word. A lot of times it's at the end of the word and it has that E sound, C-D-E. Happy. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. That's a little kid. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Little kids sing that all the time. I didn't know I knew the whole song. My goodness. Pretty, which is different somewhat than beautiful, which is different somewhat than cute, which is sort of different than fine. They're all considered synonyms, but they're all used differently. Oh. sorry, I'm sorry, mea culpa, right? Or lo siento, I'm sorry. Body. Now you notice how I'm pronouncing the O? I'm not saying body. That's what the British say. They go body. Out of the United States. Well, unless you're trying to sound like a, full British, body. But most people pronounce, sometimes the O is pronounced more like the ah. So we say body. Lordy. Now this is more, more Southern United States. Like, oh my God heavens, I just forgot the man who was testifying in front of the, I just forgot his name. He was testifying in front of the Senate, and someone said, well, Trump could have taped your conversation. And I think he's somewhere from the South. So normally he doesn't have a Southern accent. But then he said, Lordy, I hope so. And everybody went crazy because it's an expression that you don't normally hear in public. Lordy, I hope so. Oh, I forgot his name. Begins with a C. I can see it in front of me, but I can't remember it. Okay. Story. Tell me a story. Jaggy. History. Money. Sleepy. I'm sleepy. He's a sleepyhead. Hungry. Early. Study. Worry. Don't worry. Be happy. Remember that song? That's a long time ago. And I think it won the Grammy for the best song. It says, don't worry, be happy. And I said, what? And that's all it said was, don't worry, be happy. Crazy. Nutty. Out of your mind. Insane. Heavy. There was a rapper called Heavy D. Right? Silly. Stop being silly. Start being serious. Oh, there we go. I clicked it incorrectly. Fairy. I find that if I click it on the side, but also outside, it just disappears. Fairy tales. You tell children fairy tales. I don't know if it's a way of lying or not, but these are tales. A lot of times to teach children values and morals. And some of these fairy tales have been changed from what they originally were, because some of these fairy tales were very brutal. But they teach little girls that your Prince Charming is going to come, and that they teach little boys that he has to be a Prince Charming. And none of that's true. As long as a child doesn't believe it, it's fine. He's very tall, which is an adverb, which adds to the degree. So he's not just tall, he's very tall, right? He's very tall. Ugly, unfortunately. I think people know what that means, not pretty. Idiopathy. Ooh, did you hear me do that? And now this is a much more of a medical term. Idio means unknown, unknown origin. Right? That's why you have idiomatic expressions. Expressions whose origin you don't know, also because the words together make produce a particular meaning. But if you were to look up each word individually, you wouldn't get the meaning. Idiopathy. Finally, at last, just a word, if anybody listening to this, if they are a Spanish speaker and you're learning English, or you want to teach someone who speaks Spanish and you want to give them a heads up, when a word ends in ly in English, not all the time, and the problem is not Spanish, it's English. When a word ends in ly in Spanish, it's mente, M-A-A-N-A-T-A, M-E-N-T-E, mente. So in Spanish, this would be finalmente. Okay. That's not always, but a lot of times you can gauge the meaning of a word, because if you notice that this word is from Latin. Really, realmente. Okay, so that ly, if you're a Spanish speaker. If you're French speaker, I think it's ment, M-E-N-T, realmente. Isn't my French absolutely horrible? And my Spanish accent is not that fantastic either. Holy family. Now, see, here's when I said not always. It's not familia or whatever, mente. No, it's familia, because it only works sometimes. And it works when it's more of a suffix. Like you have final, then finally. That li is a suffix. Here, li is not a suffix, it's the word itself. It's part of the word itself. It hasn't been added on. So this would not be in Spanish. I don't know how you would do it. Familimente. It's familia. La familia. Any. Any is a very, it's one of the base words in English, but you use it in so many different ways. It can mean, it doesn't matter, whatever. I'll take any soda. That means I'm not particular about the flavor. I'll just take whatever you have, any soda. But if you don't want to have a double negative, you also use any. Instead of saying, I don't want nothing, which is absolutely horrible in English because you don't have a double negative. If you have the verb negative, I don't want, what don't you want? I don't want any. You're basically saying, I don't want nothing. But in English, it is very incorrect to have a double negative. People judge you by that. There's certain expressions or certain constructions that if you say, and you're in a formal situation, it could even prevent you from getting a job, right? No quiero nada. Okay, in Spanish, there's no problem. No quiero nada, right? Which literally means I don't want nothing. But in English, you have to. So now you could say, I want nothing. Now that's very formal. So you're not making the verb negative, right? You're making, so if you don't have the verb, it's negative. I want, what do you want? Nada. I want nothing from you. Very formal, but normally you would say, I don't want any, but you don't do double negatives in English. Although everybody does it, especially when you're in the street or you're in a very informal situation. Army, ejército. I have a heck of a time pronouncing that word in Spanish. Army. You and what army? That is you and who else is are going to prevent me from doing what I want to do. And people say, you and what army are going to stop me? Mommy. Now the Brits don't say my army. They instead of having the O, they have the U. They say mummy, mummy, as if you're a mummy, you know, the people that you wrap up their body. Mummy. I have a very bad I was never good with accents. I love accents, but I'm not good at them at all. Plenty, which means a lot, to have a lot of something. Strategy, once again, if you speak a Latin-based language, you will recognize. This is called a cognate. Cognate, and this is a true cognate, words that look like a word that looks like a word in another language. In Spanish, if you put the E in front of the S, it looks very close to the word in Spanish. I'm pretty sure it looks very close to the word in French and in Portuguese and in Italian. Jaxie, dummy, that's hard. That's calling someone not very intelligent. He's a dummy. Kind of harsh to say to someone. And because it ends in that Y doesn't mean that that's affectionate. It's not. Okay. Hysterectomy. Ooh, that's a biggie, right? But and you learn this very early, especially if you're a female. A hysterectomy is when they remove everything, because you have cancer and as a result, you can't have a child. And you go into menopause very early if you're having it when you're in your 20s or 30s. Gallery. A gallery is a place where you put artwork or something that you're going to sell, but it's mostly art. Fanny, this is only American English. Yeah, because you have to be careful. And it's an old-fashioned word. It's a word for your rear end or your backside or derrière, because we call it sometimes depending on where you are, instead of saying backside or saying the more vulgar term ass, you say derrière. Because if you speak the French, Americans love two accents mostly. They love the Irish accent too, so I should say three. They love the British accent, the French accent, and I think the Irish accent also. They're okay. I also have favorites too. I love some African accents, because to me it's a mixture. Depending on the level, it depends. Okay. Mighty, powerful. You say, Almighty God. In a lot of prayers, you will see the word mighty, powerful. Leafy, dopey, which is like dummy. Even though you see the word dope in there, it has nothing to do with, pharmaceutical products. It just means you're dopey, you're kind of dumb, kind of stupid. Busy. Now, here's again, the S is not pronounced busy. The S is pronounced like the Z. So you say busy. So even though it's written with an S, the pronunciation is the Z. And you know that because you hear it all the time. And I bet you a lot of Americans, or no, English speakers, if you said, how are you pronouncing the S? They would say like the S. They wouldn't even be aware that they're pronouncing it like the Z. That's why you have to study your own language in order to teach it, and really in order to understand it. Dusky, patsy. This is more of a not more, it's informal. A patsy is a sucker, got you sucker. It's a chump, which is even more street. It's the closest you can get to street without cursing. It's someone who is so naive, they don't know, other people take advantage of them. That's a patsy. Shorty is someone, now this is affectionate, shorty. Someone who is short, but you got to be careful in English. In Spanish, you can, and I don't know in other languages too, this is also true, but you can look at somebody and take one of their characteristics, right? And you can use that characteristic as a name, right? Maybe a characteristic is, gordo, fatty, right? Or skinny, You're real skinny, so you call the person skinny or or let me think of another word. You can also use the person's color. You can say morena, which means like brown or black, okay, or negra, which definitely means black. In English, you can't do that. I mean, you can do it, but you have to be very careful. You have to know the person. You have to know the person so well that if you call them this name, they won't say you're calling them out of their name, which is an insult. That means you're insulting them. So these shorty and fatty and all these different names, you have to be very, very careful. The culture doesn't allow for it, at least in the United States. It may in other English-speaking countries. Oh, no, if I don't say it quickly, I won't be able to say it. Idiocracy. Okay, these are these $64 million words. Biography. Now you see how the I in the first word by I. That's another pronunciation for the Y. But here, biography, fee, that's the PHY. And that PH, as you probably know if you studied any length of English, is it's the F sound. Always the F sound. That never changes. The F sound. Planetary. Chewy. When something is chewy, it's something that you can chew. Like a lot of people like their cookies chewy, not hard. Jetty. Lippy. Lorry, British English rather than American. Okay. And going back to the beginning, seedy. So this is the Y when it has the sound of the long E. Just remember, just because you see a Y in the word, you can't say, oh, I know how to pronounce it because the Y is pronounced like the long E. I have a whole set of cards. It's called Freaky Y, Crazy Y, excuse me. And the Y sometimes is pronounced one way versus the other. And in one word, you can get the Y pronounced 2 or 3 different ways. Because you can have maybe a couple Y's in a word, and each one is pronounced differently. Okay, so once again, this is Corella Fickler McLean at welcome.com. I want to thank you for coming to my site, to my platform, looking at my cards. Help you to either learn the language better if you're a native speaker, learn the language better if you're an ESL student, and if you're teaching ESL, because you're going to get students, if you're teaching, just don't think because you speak the language, you know the language. This helps you, so when a student says, well, why do you pronounce it like that? You can't always give them a definitive answer. But sometimes you can. At least you won't always say, because that's the way it sounds, or that's just the way it is. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes, many times it isn't. And you don't want your student to become frustrated and say, I can never learn this language because I'm not living in the country. I won't know how it's pronounced. So please subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And I'm back, and I'm going to say goodbye. And I'm going to say thank you very much. Bye-bye.